Wall Street Journal today about Walmart expanding. And I guess they're getting a lot of kickback money from all of the environmental sciences development, all of the eco-technology that they're pouring money into. They're getting a lot of kickback, surprisingly. Did you find
Hi, welcome to the F Word. My name is Corey, and I'm the producer of this show. The things you will hear over the next 45 minutes represent the views of the F Word and the people making them. All opinions and quotations in no way represent River West Radio and are the sole responsibility of the producer, guests, and callers. River West Radio is not liable for any legal issues arising from the content of this program. Today we'll be discussing feminist theory along with the origins of patriarchy. We have,
according to our opinion.
yes, solely our opinion.
Okay, so I'll introduce myself first. I'm Tiffany. Actually, all three of us are from UWM, and we're members of Students for Democratic Society on campus. But I'm a women's studies major and a history minor, and my theories are more based on Marxist socialist feminist theory, which I'll get into more after everyone else has introduced themselves.
I'm Molly. I am a social work major at UWM, and a lot of my theories come from similar places as Tiffany's. I also like to incorporate a lot of environmental theories into my feminism. I'm really excited to be on the show today, and excited to be here with Tiffany and Corey, so I'll let Corey introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Corey. I'm a pre-med student at UWM. Although I don't have any well-defined theories about feminism, I am here to provide a male perspective, as limited as that might be.
Okay, I'll start by, this is going to be kind of like a loose-ended discussion. It's not going to have any, where I'm just going to say exactly what my theory is. We're just going to chime in whenever. But my basis is off of the basic principles of Marxist-Leninist theory, as well as bringing it into feminism, as Engels was the first to really bring up, where he started talking about the history of marriage and where it really truly comes from, and the patriarchy that goes along with it. Though my basic, I believe that patriarchy, though it is not purely from classist societies, it is enabled by capitalism, and in order to get rid of the patriarchal system in which we live, we have to destroy capitalism and the classist society in general.
So I guess where we differ on that is capitalism has only been around for the last approximately 500 years, and patriarchy is something that has governed society since biblical times, which I feel religion is a very I guess I use the term religion loosely, but a very big aspect in patriarchy governing our society. And so
I think, like I said, I was said that it's not fully from that,
Yeah.
but I feel like it totally enables it and exploits it because it's innate within the type of society in which it is. Though religion has, basically Christianity itself has a lot to do with it as well, and that comes into the societal and cultural standpoints that come into socialist feminist theory, because our country in particular is a country very much based on Christianity as well as capitalism, so those both come into play when it comes to developing our society and culture. However, one of the big things too is sex classes, which I feel has always been around, whether it's a matriarchal society or patriarchal society. But within our own society, it's obviously patriarchal, where we can compare to, when we talk about the bourgeoisie to the proletariat, our actual relationships themselves, or relationships with men and women in general, no matter what your economic class is. The men are compared to the bourgeoisie and have more of the power, while the women are your proletariat, and no matter what your race, sex, gender, etc. is, women are going to be the most oppressed, and it's exploited by our system because capital, not even going into the whole class thing, like I'm just going to get away from just purely Marxist theory right now and just go into like my explanation as to why capitalism and why capitalist society and cultures create this is because when you just look at even the media alone, right, they're exploiting women for the benefit and gain of their own financial interest. And why is it that in this society it's okay to do that? Because women, going back now into my theory, like my basis theory, is because women are those that are oppressed, and they are the ones that are able to be exploited because they are the lesser of the two classes, in sex classes.
I think there's a difference, though, between the oppression of women and the oppression of femininity.
Of course.
And that's where I kind of like to bring in the male perspective on it, because I feel like, I don't know if I'm kind of going off topic with what you're saying,
no.
but I feel like just the oppression of femininity in general is something that, in order for women to achieve equality, in order for women to have more of a say in the way our society is run, I think the issue of that femininity and gender oppression needs to be addressed. Not so much as, like, I don't know, I guess from a male perspective, do you feel like that's true? Like, femininity in general? Have you
definitely.
experienced that?
I mean, there's always been a war on femininity so long as I can remember.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and although I can't fully understand the issues of feminism, I always felt that, and even before I became a feminist, it was always an issue of masculine versus feminine, and the certain value of these traits being put up one level higher than the other, and I never understood quite exactly why we had to draw the line exactly and just have a level of human characteristics as opposed to masculine and feminine.
That's why I'm getting anxious, because I wanted to get into that. My question whenever feminists bring in this theory about femininity is it brings back into the binary, which enables the societal restrictions put onto gender. And my personality is quite masculine, honestly. And so whenever that question, and I do have feminine traits, but when people bring in this thing about femininity, well, what is femininity? Like, what is it? And isn't that not created by the society that oppresses us? And well, I understand that these are traits. I don't think these traits should be seen as negatives, as they are. But I also don't think that they should be limited to one gender. And I don't think that traits should be labeled as female or male to begin with. I feel that the majority of people themselves do not fit into any of these boxes. And I feel like it's a struggle even within our society where we feel like we have to fit in these boxes or we're not right. Like, I'm not saying us, because we're obviously really aware of restrictions and binaries and binds put onto us, whether we're male or female or wherever we classify. But the average person struggles their whole life and is told how they need to act and how they can't act. And I feel like that's a huge problem. But of course, now I'm getting more into queer theory rather than feminist theory itself, but they overlap.
Yeah.
They very much so overlap. My question is always femininity. What really is it? Because you can go into other societies and feminine traits are completely different. And then it makes me, as somebody who does not qualify under all these feminine traits, as feeling kind of insecure around my sisters and stuff, you know? Because then I feel like, well, then am I wrong that I have all these masculine traits? And I know that's not the case. And I still do think it's very, very wrong that feminine traits are seen as negative. And again, there's, like Corey said, they should be human traits, not male or female. But
yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you, and that kind of brings me back to something that I was talking with someone else about, and they brought up the aspect of, like, women actually physically giving birth as a very feminine thing rather than a biological thing. And I think, I mean, personally for me, I feel like I get kind of upset when people see me as a woman, and that because I have the ability to procreate, that is like feminine
Part of
rather than
your
biological.
part of your identity
I
rather
think
than.
it's biological because
Yeah.
then what the question of what is feminine and what's not feminine comes into question. The feminine is more of a social personality construct rather than
Yeah.
an actual physical construct. And I mean, obviously there's different theories, and like even within radical feminism itself, there's cultural and libertarian radical feminism, and both have totally different things when it comes to this exact thing. But like me personally, I'm just like, no, it's biological, and the libertarian radical feminists would argue that it's not biological, and that there's not something that's naturally innate in us, and they're the ones that are saying like exactly what you're saying. To bring it back to theory, and of course I'm going to bring up theory a lot because that's what I study, right? But like that's exactly what you brought up, what you heard somebody say, or what they told you, is that it is not a biological thing, and it's a feminine trait that is created through a societal construct. At least that's what the theory is. I don't know where that person was coming from specifically, but that's what the theory is. And to me, it's not right, because no matter what society you live in, no matter what culture, whatever binds or whatever they create in that society, a woman gives birth. I mean, we are naturally born with the ability to do such, and whether or not that is something you personally choose to utilize or not, that's your choice. But that does not say that it is not biological, because it is.
Yeah, and like I feel like when the issue of like actual like physical femininity, as in something like that, I feel really alienated in conversations when people really play that aspect of being biologically female up and talk about what a great and wondrous thing our bodies are, and I just feel like because I happen to be born female with the ability to carry a child inside of me, I don't feel any more feminine or any less feminine than anybody else, really. And I often feel alienated in feminist conversations when it kind of takes that turn.
Definitely. No, I totally understand where that's coming from. And of course, my basic theory wouldn't be really truly getting into this exact topic. It would be focused more on, well, if you're going to stay at home, then you should be paid by the government for your work. But that's a whole different subject. But like, that's what I study. But me personally, when it comes to this exact conversation, no, I understand exactly where you're coming from. It's like, yeah, someday I would want a child, but do I see it as like a feminine thing of mine? No. I feel that I just happen to be the one that gives birth. I just happen to be that one. Whether it wouldn't matter which way I was, I would still want that one kid one day, right? And it's not going to make me more in touch, but then again, coming from like how I was raised, more with this like new agey pagan type stuff, I can see like how it connects to the earth, and it makes you more not feminine, but more you're female, so you have this creating ability, and it's something beautiful, and if you do it, it's something beautiful. But should that be what we base that whole thing on? Is this feminine quality? No, I don't think it's that. Like,
I think when it comes
it's
to
a little
this issue, I think especially like being connected with nature and the earth, like I feel like equally men and women, whatever gender, whoever you are, like you can have that connection with the earth and just through yourself, and it doesn't matter like what gender you are. So it really bothers me when people try and put a gender to like the natural world, like Mother Earth and like things like that. I find it so silly, and really, I mean, personally, to me, I find it really silly and very, I don't know, it's very hard for me to kind of understand that perspective.
I think that perspective comes out of old pagan traditions and theories based on that women are like these wise, strong, connected with the earth, and it may just be it may actually be a scientifically biological thing with us having like a larger frontal lobe, so we have this more.
Larger limbic system.
Yes, yes, thank you. To be able to connect or have emotions, but I also feel like that also has to do with societal things, and we can never truly know how far that would be without the societal binaries put onto us. But also, I think because going into the feminine, masculine binary concept, and I'm just saying, I'm not saying what I believe, I'm just saying I'm trying to answer why this may be. When you're putting it into this binary, females have always been associated with creating and nurturing, and that goes, I don't know if that's technically feminine or if it's our physical biological femaleness rather than feminine personality traits. And I feel like that's where people get kind of lost, like what this originally came from, like it's a feminine thing rather than a biological thing, because biologically women do create. So Earth is like our nurturer, and if we technically by default when carrying a child are nurturing that child while carrying it, and though I think that men, and I would prefer that men are like the basic caretakers of the child and women can go and work, you know, because we carry the child, so why can't they take care of it right after we're healed up and ready to go back into the working force? So for that 9 months, we do nurture the child, and the child would not be born if it was not for that 9 months of us nurturing it. And the earth is what sustains us and gives us food and preserves our life, essentially. So I think that's where the whole Mother Earth construct may derive from. So
I still take issue with it.
Yeah. It's a simplistic way of looking at it, and so I'm not sure how much it affects modern issues of feminism, although it is still brought up today. Maybe we should change topic.
Oh, what are you, moderator?
Trying to fulfill a
Okay, well
purpose.
then you have to suggest the topic.
Well, why don't we get back into origins of patriarchy and branch
Okay.
off more from there?
Well, I think we can tie it all in then. You talking about paganism and how a lot of religions, or at least in paganism, you know, it's seen as like Mother Earth. Women have a spiritual connection. Women create. But then back to Christianity, I mean, God is almost always depicted as male, male creator. And I don't know, I just think it's a strange phenomenon trying to pinpoint where patriarchy really became the accepted kind of social norm.
I mean, matriarchy and patriarchy have always both existed, right?
Yeah.
It just different, even in tribal days, it just depended on that specific group, right? But the spread of it I think the spreads, you're right, could have started with Christianity, but Christianity, even prior to capitalism, still had that, like, hierarchical system, and it can, because classism isn't just necessarily capitalist. Classism comes from hierarchical systems, right?
Yeah.
So Christianity in and itself is a hierarchical system. And I remember, I think I said this to you last week about like kind of the history of like Christianity kind of wiping out paganism, right? And
Yeah, and I was talking about like how the native cultures too of the Americas were totally just decimated by conquistadors in Christianity.
exactly. And you know, in other Western countries, in Europe, it was not uncommon for there to be a town wise woman, right? And the word hag originally was a positive thing that meant, you know, an older, wiser woman who typically had like healing abilities because of their connection with the earth or spirituality or natural herbs and healing and things of that nature. And paganism never fully was decimated. until the huge spread of Christianity and the I would say like 1400s to 1600s is when they started wiping out the whole wise women thing, and they started making them. They would discredit them, and that's when they would take words like Hag and start using them in negative tones, and then they would replace pagan temples with Christian churches, and then these societies that were, no matter whether the society as itself was more man-based because of the workforce and all of that, they still would look to these women to heal them and for guidance, right? But once the churches were being built and Christianity just wiped them out, and then their last little kick was the witch burnings and the witch trials, that's when you see patriarchy really starting to get into place, because especially the witch trials within America and like England and all of that part of Europe was pretty much so there was a higher percentage of women than men. More so than even today, because is still a little more, there's more women than there are men, but it was a higher percentage. And so when women would not be able to marry because there weren't enough men, then they would, once they'd get to a certain age, because most people live to like 40 and 50, and they'd get to that age, they'd be seen as these old, the reclamation of Hag, they took that word, they would see these people as bad people, and they couldn't have these strong women being around, so then that was Christianity's last little trick, and then here comes patriarchy. So it does correlate, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know, what is your take on the role of religion and patriarchy?
It's excuse me, got all excited. Yeah, obviously someone who's being an ex-atheist and develops very strong views on religion, and then learning about feminism and the origins of patriarchy, it's always been a relatively easy connect to make, you know. All this ridiculous things, whether it's in the Bible or other religious doctrines, trying to limit women and create this, basically make them second-class citizens or lower to men, as to enforce more structure upon them and enforce their own will and create the family household as they see fit. So, where does it derive from, or?
No, I mean, like, do you feel like religion, at least, I mean, in modern society, alienates men just as much as women in some ways because of the extreme Christian right, maybe?
I could see how I could see that point. Do I feel alienated through patriarchy perpetuated by religion?
Yeah.
To a certain extent, being a man, patriarchy doesn't affect me as directly as it would if I were a woman, but rather indirectly.
Yeah.
So, it affects me because it makes me out to be this. I have to be this strong leader. I have to make all the decisions. I have to enforce my will. If I take orders, then I'm weak. It follows that line of logic, but yeah, definitely indirectly, and I would even say it affects me in a negative sense, that if I'm not running the household, or if I'm not in control of the relationship or leading it, then I'm somehow less of a man, and to me that's just wrong, because it's always supposed to have been an equal partnership as opposed
I feel
to.
less than a woman if I'm not doing that.
Well, the idea is an equal partnership, and that's of course the ideal. So, excuse me.
I'm making funny.
Yeah. That's my opinion on it. So obviously I have more views on religion than I do religion impacting feminism. If you want to say something?
Well, no, I wanted to bring up a question that was actually discussed in my feminist theory class in the beginning of the semester, and that is, since we've been talking about oppression a lot, right? Do you feel that the oppressors are oppressed? Because here's something, we were talking about this, I believe, the first week, and whether we felt that the oppressors themselves are oppressed because of the binary system. Are they being oppressed? I mean, yes. I'm going to give a quick little thing, so that you understand like what the definition of oppression, because this is coming from Fry's reading oppression. So by oppression, or by the oppressors being oppressed, we're talking about the binary system, right? And so, yes, men do have restrictions put on them of how they have to act and behave. But is that creating this? So in order to be oppressed, according to Fry's writings, you have to have certain restrictions that do not allow you to function outside of certain spheres, and that your spheres can't like overlap. That's just one thing. But also other things that create oppression. I mean, think about what is oppression to you, and do you think that the oppressor, which would be you, Sario, Corey, is actually just as oppressed as women, and why? Or why not?
Well, quickly, I guess, to answer that, I feel that patriarchy represses society. And while women are obviously the target of that oppression, I do think that patriarchy as a whole represses society, including the oppressors.
But are they oppressed? Are they oppressed in the sense that they are not able to, like, fully function to where because let's put it this way, women are not equal. We do not start out equal. Yeah. Because of the binds and these binaries put onto us, we cannot even get to that equal point no matter what we do. We are being paid less. No matter how much we work, the masculine traits are positive traits. The feminine traits are negative traits for people to have. So are the oppressors truly oppressed? They do have restrictions to a point, but is it causing them severe pain to where they are not able to fully function and develop into the person that they choose to be? I mean, yes, men, yes.
I think in some instances, yes. Because
I'm talking in heteronormative terms. I'm talking about the heterosexual.
Yeah, in a heteronormative person, if they portray certain personality traits, if they try to break that gender norm that's so rigid for men as well as women, I think they do face some of the same things. I'm not by any means discrediting the oppression that women face in society, but I think it needs to be recognized how it affects the oppressors as well, and men.
It does affect the oppressors, but I feel like it's more of an oppression socially.
Exactly.
Rather than a full-on oppression, because with women, it's oppression from all angles. It's oppression on your reproductive system and exploitation of that, which I can get into a whole different day, because that would take a long time to get into my whole theories of reproduction labor and the exploitation that comes along with that, which goes along with Marxist socialist feminist theory. But women are oppressed. Men, they have oppressiveness on them, but it's not oppression because it's only in one area of their life.
Yeah, it's definitely only within the social aspect.
And I'm saying in purely heteronormative. I'm not getting into like queer theory right now, which I can discuss that as well. But
it's so hard for me to even just.
Yeah, but I'm trying, and that's why I keep having to say let's think in heteronormatives here, because we're talking about like purely just feminism and not going over into the other area, which does correlate very strongly. But when we're looking at male-female traits, men are oppressed in social constructs. So I hang around with and date men that aren't fully labeled under the masculine trait systems put on them, the extreme machismo. But of course, even those men still have some of those traits, and you can't let go of that. But that's not a full oppression, because economically, they get the same job as a woman who could have more education and more background in that job. You go and get a job, we're going to be making 75 cents tops to that white man's dollar. A woman of color, 68 cents to that white man's dollar. So when we're talking about full-on oppression, yeah, we walk into a store, a woman's going to be treated different than a white male.
Yeah. I mean, that's why by no means whatsoever
So
am I trying to discredit
and that's
the
why we have to
oppression
look
of
at
women,
what is,
which is why we have this show here.
And that's why I'm saying we gotta look at what oppression truly is. And oppression is something that's more full on scale and it affects everything part of your being. So men, they have prejudices against them if they don't fulfill those male, female, binary system traits. But they are not oppressed. They are not oppressed by them. So if a man has more quote unquote feminine traits, personality wise, that isn't going to prevent them from getting paid more than a woman. That's not going to prevent them from when they are just walking down a street being able to be seen differently or said differently. Of course, I'm speaking again in heteronormative, in the binary. Here, I'm talking in purely heteronormative terms here, which I don't always like to talk in, but for this exact conversation, it's necessary to keep this distinction here when speaking of oppression. So when we're talking about a man walking down the street, whether he be white or of color, you're talking about a black man walking versus the black woman walking, same binary has existed. The woman's going to be treated different than the man's going to be treated. Just the way it is. And
Yeah. I agree.
and that goes back into my sex classes. The bourgeoisie versus the proletariat.
Why don't you get more into that?
I mean, I feel like it's if you have basic, I mean, in order for me to really fully get into it, if you don't understand
We
any
need more than 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
no.
I mean, if you understand
No.
basic Marxist principles of like the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, pretty much, your upper classes versus your working class and poor. I mean, well, proletariat's working class, but you get what I mean. So, and socialist Marxist theories based on like the uprising to defeat the oppression of the proletariat. So in these in this context, I'm saying that men are the oppressors and are the bourgeoisie and have the privileges and that are similar to those of higher class, while females are those that are doing all this work and we create life, just like the working class creates the goods and produces the goods in which the bourgeoisie need to survive. I mean, I feel like it's very cut and dry if you have that basic understanding.
Good talk, guys.
It was.
Any last comments
Corey, do you want
on
to
the
say
subject?
more?
Yeah.
Because we've been saying our stuff a lot.
Good God. I agree with a lot with what Tiffany is saying, and I enjoyed the religious aspects
course.
coming through from. Of course, I did. That Molly was talking about. But I think that was a great way to wrap up. Unless we have anything else we want to cover
we
in
can
the
even-
last 9
Do you
minutes.
feel oppressed, Corey?
Do you have-
Is
Only
your
on-
voice being
only-
oppressed on the F word?
No.
See, even now, us females cannot oppress him. It's not in us.
No matter how hard we try.
No.
Technically, I feel more free on
Well,
here.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, Molly, is there more you'd like to say? Because it was Molly's idea for us to do this, so.
I guess I just want to really make sure that it's clear from my standpoint that obviously I feel personally the oppression of women, and I feel as a society, global society, which is something that I've talked a lot about, how we face oppression on a global scale.
For sure.
And how now it's become just an even more further reach of patriarchy with the spread of the Western world and the spread of global patriarchy, and just recognize the oppression of women. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm downplaying that at all. So just to be clear. That's
Yep,
it.
I think that was very clear.
Okay.
Are we ready to sign
You
off?
sure there's nothing else you want to say, Corey? I mean, you should be privileged that we allowed somebody as privileged.
I am
be on
very
the show.
privileged. I'm humbled by the experience, truly and honestly. So it was nice to have my voice heard. Although, again, I hope I was of some assistance. In a very minor aspect, I'm sure I was.
Yay.
Yeah.
Well, then with no further ado, I will say thank you to any of our listeners. And thank you to Tiffany and Corey for commenting and putting some very insightful wisdom over the airways today. And
Thank
that's
For your insightfulness.
well, on that note, now that thank yous are said, that will conclude our show for today.
All right.